Uh, well, I want to start with the thanks to the new MKM Executive Committee for giving me this opportunity. And I wish them all the best in the new year and assure them that they have our support, wholehearted support. All the best, Shriran, Padmini, and your team. Today's topic is Jnana Yoga. And Mukhya Manje, I want to thank all of you. There are almost 50 people for joining me, and we'll make it worthwhile and we'll have some interesting discussion after the presentation. So it will be a time well invested. So today's topic is Jnana Yoga. Before I get into that, just to give you a brief sum up, I spoke about Karma Yoga, I spoke about Bhakti Yoga. Many of you have attended that, and I emphasized how Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga have to have Jnana Yoga along with it. Bhakti Yoga without Jnana becomes Andhashraddha and can lead a person astray. Karma Yoga without Gyan can make a person extremely selfish and does not enable to serve the society properly. So Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga have to be supported by Gyan. Now, but today's lecture focus is on Jnana Yoga. And before we start, I want to wish all the attendees a happy new year because 2021 we just started and we are starting up with some spiritual discussion, which will be great. Talking of happy new year, I thought I'll start with this slide, which talks about what do we long for, and not just us, every animal, but let's talk about human beings. What do we long for? We long for happiness, contentment, bliss, freedom from suffering, or as the Buddhists say, dukkha, ability to live in peace and equanimity. And most religions, which are designed to establish harmony in the society, do follow or do provide this opportunity. For Abrahamic religions, which is essentially Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they basically talk about heaven or paradise as the places to go where one goes after this life. For Hinduism, the moksha or mukti is a state of mind. It is not necessarily a place to go, and that is a big difference. Now, occasionally, I will compare Hinduism or Abrahamic versus with the Abrahamic religions. I respect all religions. The reason for comparison is the three largest practiced or four largest practiced religions in the world are Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism. And the two, Christianity and Islam, belong to the tradition of Abraham, and they are called Abrahamic religions. And Hinduism and Buddhism follow the tradition of Dharma religions, or Dharmic religions, India based. And there's a lot of commonality between these two and those two. And so, for the sake of comparison, since we live in a Judeo Christian environment, I may compare them. But it is essentially to drive home a point. Uh, so, if happiness and seeking happiness and contentment is the goal in life, then how do we accomplish it? And that is the focus of Jnana Yoga. That is the focus of our talk today. But before I get into that, I do want to share with you some of the concepts which I have presented in the past. And education is a part of, repetition is a part of education, as they say in adult education. So I'll just give you a very, very quick 2 minute summary of the typical composition of a religion. Most religions, and Hinduism is no exception, comprise of these layers. The outermost layer is rituals, rites, festivals, practices, and this is what is practiced most of the times in most of our temples and this is what is get exposed to our next generation and the generation after that. These are important things, rituals, rites, festivals, and practices, but they do not define Hinduism. So you go a little bit deeper and you come to the values. What are the values in Sanskrit and Marathi? It's called mulya. That means how do you live in a society? And since most the religions are intended to establish harmony in the society, the values overlap with each other. Ahimsa, Satya, cleanliness, Sattva Shuddhi, these are all the values which most of the religions teach. Then comes, dig a little bit deeper, then comes the goals in life. And in in Abrahamic religion, for instance, in Christianity, goal in life is to surrender to Jesus so you can go to heaven after this life. In Hinduism, the goal in life is dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma is the operating principle, and as long as you operate and live by dharma, kama, which is the physical pleasure, and artha, which is the material pleasure, so material security, or fair balls. And the ultimate goal is the moksha, which is the mukti, which can be achieved if you have collected enough of good deeds of the from the past life into this life. So you don't have to be dead in order to go to the moksha. However, this law of karma also applies. So the seven stars of Hinduism, and this is intended for the next generation to explain what the core beliefs of Hinduism are. There's one God which we call Brahman, which is universal consciousness, and Atman is the essence of Brahman which resides in all of us, and that is Atman Brahman non-duality. Atman is the same as the Brahman, just what is inside you. Soul, I've used that word for non-human living things, and the same Atman lives, part of the Brahman, which lives in animals, in plants, in birds, and everywhere. And of course, the law of karma is you reap as you sow. Those are the four core tenets of Hinduism. And then there are three paths to liberation or moksha or mukti: path of intellect, path of devotion, and path of action. I show this as an acronym because my focus is, in addition to explaining our next generation about the rituals, what goes on in the temples or at home, puja, worships, festivals, one should be able to tell them in a succinct form what are the core tenets of our religion so that they understand there's a lot more of philosophy to this religion than just worshipping or doing puja. And this is way of them being able to remember through the acronym. So ask God idea. And I've given the whole lecture on that. But this is with that I will move on. And I said role of Jnana Yoga. So the three paths to moksha are in Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Karma Yoga. And all of us need a little bit of everything. And how much of bhakti and how much of karma and how much of gyan depends upon your disposition, stage in life, and your status in life. So I give an example that Jnana is the rudder of the plane, Bhakti and Karma are the wings. Without Gyan, the plane goes haywire. With the Gyan, you can navigate the plane to the right destiny. And why is it important? Because it is interesting to see that, and I made this presentation to universities and high schools, and the kids, Indian as well as non-Indian kids, are amazed that our religion or our core concepts of philosophy takes into account since divinity resides in you, you are capable of doing everything. So builds some self-confidence. The Atman Brahman lives in everybody. So as a result, it's uh, impresses upon them the universal brotherhood. Environmentalism, because the same Atman is part of the Brahman, which resides in plants and animals, environmentalism is embedded in our religion. And self determination, the law of karma says you reap what you sow. So, what happens to you is within your control, and that self determination is built into our religious faith. And there are multiple paths to liberation. So you are not obligated to follow only one path. You can customize your path based on what you want to do, based on your disposition, based on the stage at which you are in your life, and you can continue to change that if necessary. What a beautiful flexibility that the religion provides. It is not dogmatic, it is not prescriptive like many other religions. It just gives you that freedom to design your own path. So that is the seven stars approach. Why am I saying this? I think one has to be aware that these are the philosophical underlying tenets of our religion, and they need to be passed on to our next generation. Now, these seven stars are based on two types of literature. Many of you probably know about this, so I'll be quick. Shruti literature and Smriti literature. Shruti literature Shruti literature comprises of Ved, Upanishad, Brahma Sutra, and Bhagavad Gita. They are also foundational texts for our religion, and hence they are called Prasthana Traya. No, it is the foundational. And the collective and the Shruti literature does not have an author. Nobody knows who's written the Vedas. So I call them collective knowledge and wisdom of the ancient rishis who were spiritual scientists as well as material or physical scientists. People don't realize, but most of our rishis were doing research and they were scientists on both areas, physical sciences as well as spiritual science. In fact, in our tradition, there is no distinction because there is a one continuum which starts with physical science and ends up in the spiritual science. For example, Patanjali, Rishi Patanjali, who is known for his knowledge about Yoga Sutra, he's compiled the Yoga Sutras, and he was a great mathematician. He was also a grammarian, and he wrote Yoga Sutras. So he was a spiritual scientist as well as a material scientist. Smriti literature, on the other hand, is the interpretation of Shruti written by an individual, what he thought or she thought was appropriate for his or his her time. For example, Manu wrote Manusmriti. Manusmriti is Manu's interpretation of how the society should behave at the time that he existed. That does not make Manusmriti the ultimate truth for Hinduism. Manusmriti is Manu's interpretation of the Shruti literature. And that's why the reason I want to emphasize that is because there's a lot of questioning done about Hinduism based on this Smriti literature. And that is not the ultimate truth. Ultimate truth lies in the Shruti literature. The seven stars of Hinduism talk about the Shruti literature, not the Smriti. Puranas, Itihas, they are all a part of Smriti literature because they have an author. Itihas, Mahabharat, Ramayana have authors. They are Smriti literature. The only exception is Bhagavad Gita, although it is a part of Mahabharat, has been upgraded to be into the Shruti literature, and that's why a lot of people call it Gitopanishad because it is so true to the teachings of Bhagavad Gita Upanishads that it is considered to be a Shruti. So just be aware that Shruti literature is the basis of our religion, philosophical metaphysics of our religion, and not the Smriti. Smriti is very important, very good, but it basically interprets Shruti as per the what is thought by the individual who's written them. Now, I keep saying Veda. There's a lot of misunderstanding, probably not amongst this audience because they are the mukshus, but amongst people about Upanishads being different than the Veda because they are taken together but separately, Veda Upanishad. Actually, the Upanishads are a part of the Ved. The four Ved, as you see, Rig Ved, Yajur Ved, Sama Ved, and Atharva Ved. And Rig Ved comprises the hymns, the Yajur Ved of sacrifices, and the yajnas and the procedures. Sama Ved has Rig Ved and Yajur Ved hymns, which can be sung in Indian classical music, and Atharva Ved comprises of a lot of metaphysics, medicine, chemical formulae, and things like art of war. And then there are Upavedas, which also belong to different Vedas, and these are actually material science or the physical sciences. Like Shilpa Veda deals with mechanics and architecture, Dhanur Veda deals with defense and warfare, Gandharva Veda deals with music and arts, and Ayurveda, one of deals with medicine and healthcare. So these Upanishads are a part of Ved. Now, Ved are broken down into basically two parts. First part is called Karma Kanda, which involves Samhitas and Brahmanas, and Jnana Kanda, which is Aryankas and Upanishads. Because the Upanishads come at the end of the Vedas, they are also called Vedanta. So when you say Vedant, it is Upanishad. Vedantic theory, Vedantic metaphysics is Upanishadic theory and Upanishadic um, metaphysics. So just clarification because there's a lot of confusion about what Vedas are. Now, principal Upanishads, Adi Shankaracharya wrote Bhashya or the commentary on 10 Upanishads. There are over 108 Upanishads, and he just took the 10 what he thought were important Upanishads and wrote commentary. That's why they were called principal Upanishads. And I've added two more, Shvetashvara and Vajrasuchika. So here are the 12 Upanishads. The point I want to make is they vary in length. If you can see, Brahadaranyaka has 435, Chandogya has 628 mantras, whereas Vajrasuchika has only 9, and Ishavasya has only 18, Mandukya has only 12. So they vary in the length. They are sprinkled all over in the Vedas. Some of them are in Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. But they come as in terms of philosophy, in terms of metaphysics. In addition to this, so you understood the Ved, how Upanishads are a part of the Ved. Now, in addition to that, there has been a lot of analysis and interpretation of all of this literature by major rishis, and these are called darshanas. So there are a number of darshanas, but the six darshanas which consider Ved to be of primacy, important, or they derive from, they believe in the Vedas. These six darshanas are considered to be major darshana or philosophical interpretations. And this is important while learning Jnana Yoga. And this is important because you will probably come across some questions from your children or grandchildren. What do you mean by this? And this interpretation or these philosophical interpretations might be useful. Nyaya and Vaishashtika. These are two darshanas written by Gautama and Kannad or Kashyapa Rishi, the same name, same Rishi, he's got two names. And Nyaya deals with logic, and Vaisheshika deals with atomic theory. And it's quite fascinating actually. Vaisheshika deals with the number of substances, how Anu, Parmanu come together and form a new substance, and how the substances are formed together, and what is the logic in that, what is the proof of that. All of that is discussed in the Nyaya, in logic and proof, and Vaisheshika about the material, Anu, Parmanu, and the substances. Uh, Not this is not the focus of the talk, so we will move on. I just want to make a comment on the time frame. I put down some time frame, and it's very wide because the antiquity of all of these interpretations or darshanas as well as our literature is questionable. A lot of people have, Western people have timed them in the early before this current era, but many of the evidences are coming up which indicate that these are a lot older than what the Western history experts have timed them to be. So I'll leave that open ended. But Nyaya Vaisheshika is taken together normally because of this reason, because they go hand in hand, they depend upon each other's logic, and it's quite fascinating. Then comes the Sankhya and Yoga. Sankhya is one of the oldest darshana. It is assigned to Kapila, and Yoga, of course, Rishi Patanjali, and it came later. But Yoga darshan is dependent or is based on Sankhya with some further modifications. So Sankhya and Yoga both appear in Bhagavad Gita quite a few places. In fact, second chapter of Sankhya is all about. Sorry, second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is all about Sankhya, and yoga is mentioned in the sixth chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Sankhya deals with the metaphysics of how the earth was created, the universe was created, about the elements, about the Purusha and Prakriti. And yoga deals with how to do what are the steps in order to attain unity with this Purusha. And uh, so they are very close to each other, and they are taken together generally, Sankhya and Yoga philosophy. And today's Jnana Yoga takes into account Sankhya philosophy, Yoga philosophy, and then Vedanta philosophy. Now, so the second group is the Sankhya Yoga, and the third group is Purva Mimamsa and Vedanta, or it's also called Uttar Mimamsa. And Jaimani and Badrayan are the rishis who are assigned or given credit for that, and they all depends upon, like as you can see, Purva Mimamsa depends upon vibrations and sound waves, whereas Vedanta or the Uttar Mimamsa deals with the life force, material force, and it draws a lot of metaphysics from Sankhya and Yoga. So essentially, what is going to happen is the Jnana Yoga that we talk about, or Bhagavad Gita talks about, is a combination of essence from Sankhya, from Yoga, and from Vedanta. Let's go. Now, um, each of the Vedas have some Mahavakya. Mahavakya is essence of the Upanishads. As I said, that Upanishads indicate the metaphysics which goes with that Upanishad, with that Ved. And here are the four Mahavakyas. It's good for all of you to know. The four come from the four different Vedas. I've mentioned the Upanishads from where. So Aitareya Upanishad, which is a part of Rig Veda, says Prajnanam Brahma. Yajurveda, Brahadaranaka, Aham Brahmasmi. Samaveda says Tattvamasi. And Atharvaveda says, I am Atma Brahman. These are important because they form, if you notice, all four are essentially telling the same message, that you are Brahman. And earlier in my quick review, I told you that Brahman is universal consciousness. Consciousness is lot more than energy. Energy is a part of consciousness. And that Brahman, part of that Brahman is in all of us, in you, in me, and all of us. And so uh, the Vedas are telling you that you are Brahman, and you are. If Brahman is considered divinity, then you are divine. Aham Brahmasi, I am divine. Tattvamasi, you are that divinity. I am Atma Brahma, the self, or that Atman, or that soul, or whatever you want to call it. That is Brahman. So the message is exactly the same in all four Brahma Mahavakyas, and that will form the basis of Jnana Yoga. When if universal consciousness, Brahman, is considered to be um, the ultimate God, Satchitanand, which is the eternal bliss, and part of that is inside you, then eternal bliss, happiness resides inside you. And these Bhakti Marga, Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga allow you to access to that inner peace, the inner happiness from you. And we will talk about it and learn the path towards that today. So it's going to be exciting. Um, Human inquiry. This is not new. Socrates did it, Plato did it, Aristotle did it, philosophers, which I don't even know who existed before them, but I'm sure there existed philosophers before that. They all did it. Human nature is to ask this question: who am I? How do I face the world? How do I get peace of mind? What is the end? What happens in the end? And relation with everything else in the world. And who and what is God? What is the nature of God? And these are profound questions. These are questions which are difficult to answer. But this is what people have contemplated upon. And today we will touch upon that. And what is interesting is Upanishads not only touch upon that, they give you the answer to most of these questions. Now, and we will get into that through our Jnana Yoga. So one of the things I want to share with you is in order to get into who am I, we need to develop some methodology to ask questions so that we can through logical deduction we come to the right minute or right place in order to identify who am I. Towards that end, generally in education, and this is done everywhere in the West, in the East, everywhere, generally what you do is start with what you know. You start with what you know and slowly work your way towards what you don't know. So start with the known, head for the unknown. Start with what is close by and head for the far away. And that concept is called Arundhati Naya. Why is it called Anandati Nayak? I'll give you a little story. After the wedding, in Hindu weddings, after the weddings, many of you probably are aware that what happens is the bride and the groom is taken outside, outdoor, if the wedding is indoor, by the priest, and he points it to the sky in the evening, and he says the priest wants to show him the star called Arundhati and Vashishta. So it's very difficult to point a star when there are hundreds of stars in the sky. So what he does is he takes a branch of a tree nearby and then asks them to focus on that branch, and then he starts extrapolating that and say extrapolate that and see, look at it in that direction, and those two stars that you see in that direction, one of them is Arundhati and one of them is Vashishta, and then the bride and the groom can see those, and so it's that's why it's called Arundhati Nayad. In other words, you start off close by what you can see very easily, and then you extrapolate to the unknown so that you can pinpoint on what you want to say. Towards this, I want to share digress a little bit and give you a little interesting anecdote. Do you know why Arundhati and Vashishta are considered to be ideal couple? You probably know, some of you probably don't know. The bride and the groom, and this is very interesting story. You might want to keep it to be told to some of your friends. Bride and the groom is taken out and shown the Arundhati and Vashishta to, and the priest says that you let your life be like Arundhati and Vashishta. And the current, the traditional interpretation by the priest is Arundhati was a pativrata and she looked after Vashishta very well. So your marriage should be like that. But that is not all. What the background is, Arundhati and Vashishta are two stars. Arundhati is called Alcor in the West in astronomy, and Vashishta is called Mizar in astronomy. And this is a twin star system. And in most of the twin star systems, one star is stationary and the other star goes around it. Arundhati and Vashishta, or Alcor and Mizar, are the two stars where they move in sync. They go around each other. There is no one primary star and the other goes around. They both go around each other. So they work in sync with each other. So the idea is, let your marriage, let your life be such, a married life be such that you look after each other and be in sync with each other, not one person becoming an important one, the other one going around it. So, in my judgment, our forefathers were so wise that the ideal they showed to the newlyweds was to be good partners with each other rather than one being of primary importance than the other. Just a sideline. This has nothing to do with Gyan. Anyway, in while analyzing who am I, we need to look at uh, vivek. We need to have a characteristic called vivek, which is ability to differentiate. Differentiate between what? Differentiate between changing and unchanging. Why we need to keep asking, is this thing what we're talking about changing or is it unchanging? Because we know that the Brahman and Atman are the same. And if I am the Atman, then I that Atman needs to be unchanging. So is it changing or unchanging? Subject or object? What is I am the one who's seeing everything. So what I'm seeing is called drishya. What I'm who's seeing it is called drashta. And drig drish vivek, that is the rationale Upanishads talk about. And then sentient, which is conscious, and insentient. And you'll understand this even better as we go along. In what does have chaitanya, or what is chetan, and what is jada? Jada is basically without any consciousness. So those are the three items I just mentioned, that we should have that characteristic to differentiate that whether a thing that we are talking about has these characteristics, changing or unchanging. Is it a subject or an object? Sentient, or is it a aware or unaware? So with that, we will get into the analysis of who am I. And Taittiriya Upanishad, which is a part of Yajurveda, talks about this a lot. And it talks about the five sheets or the Panchakosha. I am there, but I am also covered with five sheets, and we'll get to that. But I, which is the Brahman or Atman, is Satyam, which is truth, Jnanam, which is knowledge, and Anantam, which is eternal. We talked about that. Eternal, absolute truth, infinite knowledge, and eternal bliss. So let's look at this. Am I the body? Most of us associate ourselves with the body. My eyes, my legs, my hands, my body. I am that body. But at the same time, we recognize that you can see the body changes. There's always a change happening in the body. We were small, we grew up, we will get old, we'll have wrinkles, we may not have wrinkles, and eventually the body goes away. As in Bhagavad Gita it says, Vasasi jirnani yata vihaya, navani grahanti naroparani, tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani, jnani sanyati navani dehi. Just like a person discards old clothes and takes new ones, this Atman discards this body and takes a new one. That means I am not the body. That means it is changing. So we use the Vivek to say, is it changing or not changing? It is changing, so it cannot be the body. Is it an object or a subject? Well, it's my body. So I am different than the body. Yes, I do have a body, but I am different than the body. So I am the subject and body is the object. So it is an object, it is not a subject. So we analyzed and said, and sentient, the chaitanya or aware. I am aware of the body. Is the body aware of me? If I can look at a hand. I can say, yeah, I can see the hand. This is my hand. So it is an object. But does the hand see me? Is the hand aware that I exist? No, it doesn't. So it is insentient. That means it's unconscious. It's alive, but it's unconscious. So all three body fails. So body is just a sheath. It does not have body is not me. It is my body, but body is not me. So if body is not me, then what am I? Maybe I am the prana because I breathe. And according to Upanishads, there are five types of prana, but the one which we know most is what we do in the pranayam, the breathing. And this is the vital force. This is the force which keeps us alive. Oh, that is what we are. Yes, that is what we are. Okay, it is my prana. Suddenly, I have become different than the prana because it is my prana. And can the prana change? Yes, I can change the prana. In the pranayam, there are several types of pranayam. I can hold the pranayam. I can hold the breath for a minute, minute and a half. So prana is not unchanging. It can change based on my mood. It can change based on how I want it, and it is my prana. So I am the subject, prana is the object. And does the prana know that I exist? No, but I know that the prana exists. So I am aware, I am sentient, and prana is unaware. It is not sentient. So it's not sentient, it changes, and it is an object. So I cannot be prana. I have prana, but I cannot be prana. So if I'm not prana, what can I be? So let's go to the next stage. That what comes even inner than prana. This is now we are going with antaraksha. Well, inside the subtle body comprises of mind, manas. Maybe I am the mind. Yes, some philosopher said, I know I am the mind. Oh, wow, maybe I am mind. So then let's apply these criteria. Is it my mind? Yes. Well, the moment I say my mind, I am the subject, and the mind becomes an object. And the mind changes? Of course it does. Mind is the most changing thing. We keep changing the mind. Well, so it is changing. It is not steady. I am steady. I see the mind, or I can see, take step back and look at the mind. So I am the subject. Mind is the object. It is changing. It is not steady. And can the mind realize that I exist? No, but I know that the mind exists. So I am the sentient one. I am the aware one. Mind is not the aware one. So I cannot be just the mind. Yes, I do have a mind, but I cannot be mind. So I am something more than the mind. So what can be more than the mind? Ah, perhaps the next layer inside is the buddhi or the intellect. I must be intellect. Vijnana. Vijnana is intellect. So is intellect, I must be the intellect. Well, we'll apply the same logic to intellect and say, it is my intellect. Can the buddhi change? Of course they can change. You can grow, you can learn, you can become mature, and your intellect keeps changing, becoming more and more mature. Sometimes you forget, so that it becomes less mature in certain areas. And sometimes you step back and say, you know what? That particular theorem, that particular calculus, that particular code, that particular chemical formula, I don't understand how it happens. So I don't understand intellect. So I know that I am different than the intellect, because the intellect, it's my intellect, but I am different than intellect. So intellect cannot be me, and intellect doesn't realize that I exist, whereas I know that the intellect exists. So I cannot be intellect or buddhi. So I must be something more than that. So what can be beyond intellect? Well, then you get to a stage where you talk about Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya, that is a complete blank, total blank. And the best example one can give about this, and one of the Upanishads talk about it, that the state of awareness. There are four states of awareness the Upanishads talk about. That one is waking. Waking state is when right now we are all awake. I hope you are all awake too, and you can hear me. You can see the slides. You can, if you are sipping coffee or water or whatever. you can see that you are awake, you are aware. That is the waking state. Then, when you fall asleep, you can have a dream state whereby your senses, the sense of touch and smell and hearing, and is gone. It's inactive. However, you can dream, and sometimes some people dream in color, so that so your sense of sight is still active, and you can still see in your dream, but you don't have any senses. So that is the dream stage. But the next stage to that is you go into deep sleep. When you go into deep sleep, you cannot even, you have no senses at all. You are as practically as dead as one can get, other than the fact that you are still breathing and alive. But that deep sleep is completely blank. You are totally blank. And that is the state of Anandamaya. And that is when you wake up, you say, oh, I had a deep sleep. So that means you were conscious, but you did not feel anything. So if you are conscious and yet not feel anything, you cannot be that Anandamaya kosha. You have to be something more than that. So you are beyond that, and that is the Anandamaya kosha. So these five koshas are covering you. So where are you? Well, you are all across your body, and uh, essentially what you're talking about is these are the five sheets, as they call koshas. And Upanishads talk a lot about that. We pressed it, compressed it in a short period of time, but they talk about these five koshas. And you or me, I am way beyond that. I am like the inner, the consciousness which makes these things alive. Uh, I am in the Annamaya Kosha. I am in the Pranamaya Kosha. I am in the Manomaya Kosha. I am in Jnanamaya Kosha. In other words, I activate or I provide consciousness. In Upanishads, they talk about this I, this Brahman or this Atman is the ear, the eye of the eye, the smell of the through the nose, because all ear is just an instrument to catch the vibrations. But what vibrations are caught are processed are done by the brain, but even the brain needs consciousness for it to operate. So the closest example people give, and it's a good example, is you can have it's just an example because it is consciousness is a lot more than energy. But let's say that there's electricity, and through the electricity you run a fan and a light bulb, a computer, and all three, none of them are electricity, but electricity is in all of them. Similarly, all of without them, the electricity, this equipment will fall apart. They will not be there. So they need this electricity in order to get activated, in order to get alive. However, if you say that, okay, because the computer is working well, it is electricity, it is not electricity. Fan is not electricity. Light is not electricity, but electricity is required for all of them. And all these koshas, they operate because of the consciousness, but consciousness is something more than that. It is not that. Now, where is it? Well, it's all over. And that's where the Upanishads say, stay quiet and say, you need to do tapa and meditation to find out. But be aware that you are beyond that. And what things happen to make your life up and down, happen to all of these things. You get problems with the body, you get problems with breathing, you get problems with your mind, psychological problems, that kind of thing. But you yourself are still in good shape. So aham brahmasmi. So, how do we practice so that eventually through the practice one can get an access to this eternal bliss, which is I am, which I am, and which is Brahman. Well, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasa. What is Shravana? Shravana is listening as well as reading about these things. So today was your first day. You heard about this. Again, I explained as best as I could, but you may want to read more about this. There are a lot of good lectures on this. And then Manana. Manana is contemplate. Think about it, think and start analyzing this. And then nididhyas is total meditation. Meditate upon it. Aitareya Upanishad, there's a story about this Bhrigu and his dad, Varuna, and he asked the question, who am I? And he says, go and concentrate and meditate and come back and tell me what you found out. He comes back and says, oh, I am the body. He says, no, you got it wrong. Go again. Oh, I am the breath or prana. No, go back. You got it wrong. uh, Meditate again. That is nididhyasa, meditation. These are some of the ways sadhana is done or practices are done. Vivek, as I talked about a lot, vairagya is dispassion. Then there are six practices, Vedic practices of shama, dama, uparati, samadhan, titiksha, and shraddha. Control of the mind, control of the senses, withdrawing from the world, the senses from the world, meditating, spiritual awaiting, having titiksha, and shraddha, trust and faith. A couple of comments here. You will notice that these practices overlap a lot with Yoga Sutra and Ashtanga Yoga because they are all merged together. I said to you that, Yoga Sutra, a lot of this is drawn from the various darshanas, the Sankhya, the Yoga, the Vedanta, and they are all combined together. So they're not separate, they all more blend together. And the Shraddha is an important thing. Shraddha is trust and faith. You can indeed do yoga and go towards the job. Yoga, as many of you know, it comes from the word yuja, that means union. And yoga is done in order to have union with the Brahman. But in order to have the union with the Brahman, you need to have trust and faith that yes, indeed, Brahman exists inside me. Once you have that trust, then only you can do proper sadhana in order to access that. So if you don't have that trust, if your thought processes are completely different, if you don't believe in it, then it is very difficult to get to a stage or walk in a journey where you know that you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to have that trust as well. And mumukshu are the people like you who are seekers, who have a desire to know, who have a desire to realize, and who have a desire to learn. And these are the practices or ways to sadhana. So what is Jnana Yoga? Jnana Yoga, be aware that Tattvamasi, you are the Brahman. Try and discover the Brahman through self. In other words, through meditation, through sadhana and samadhi, you get closer to that. This path requires a lot of supreme concentration. Katha Upanishad says that this path of Jnana Yoga is like walking on a razor thin blade. It is very difficult. And that is why a lot of people, most of us, tend to prefer to walk on the path of bhakti and karma with some jnana so that we don't get distracted, so we don't get um, disgruntled, and we follow the proper path, but the path of bhakti and karma. But Jnana Yoga itself, by itself, is going to be very difficult to move. On a practical level, let me talk about practice. I keep saying about the Vivek. You have to practice Vivek with this differentiation. We talked about differentiation between what is eternal and what is short lived or ephemeral or transient. Well, that is too high a level. What happens everyday life? In everyday life, we come across this situation where we have to demonstrate vivek. And one is called, and Kathopanishad talks about Shreyas and Preyas. Shreyas is what is the right thing to do and which will have a right long term effect. Preyas is something which can give you immediate gratification, immediate satisfaction, but may hurt you in the long term. And classic example I give to the young folks, teenage or college going folks, that for example, you have homework to do, and it's a beautiful day, and your buddy calls you for a pickup game of basketball down the road, and you are tempted to go. And many times you do go. You do recognize that, hey, it's going to take me about an hour and a half of homework. I better finish that before I go, but you go anyways because you get tempted. And then the next day morning, you're complaining and crying to your mom and dad that my homework is not done. Help me, help me. We all have gone through it. We all go through it. Whether it's a simple drawing to be done, some arts and crafts to be done. How many of the moms and dads have been gotten up early in the morning so that the kids' homework is all done on time before he goes to or she goes to school? For adults, how often have you gone to the party? The dessert is great, and I say to myself, and it happens to me all the time. Having said all this, I still don't have complete control on my own taste buds. Dessert is great. I say, I'll have a second piece of, second serving of the cheesecake. I enjoy it tremendously for the next 15 minutes, half an hour. As I'm driving home, I'm saying to myself, oh my God, I'll have to go on the treadmill for another extra hour to burn up the calorie. Otherwise, it will basically show up on my stomach or wherever, in other parts of the body. Or if somebody is diabetic, they'll say, well, I'll have to take a shot of insulin. So at the time, you do recognize, however, we fall prey to the temptation, which is okay because we are human beings. We do have senses and we do fall for temptation. Vivek is the thing which, over a period of time, as you start practicing, you start getting control on that. And that is Vivek. Start with very simple baby steps. These are the baby steps that I talked about. Shreyas and prayas. That's how you start off. And as you become more and more proficient in that, as you become more and more expert in that, then you start going into a much higher level of what is eternal and uh, what is ephemeral. Key takeaways: experiential journey. It is an experiential journey. I just shared with you a very rudimentary 101 of Guyana, but you need to do more study. You need to do some more manana. You need to do nididhyasa, and it's an experiential journey. If you if you realize Atman, you will know it, and you, because it cannot be expressed, you will not be able to tell us exactly what happened, but you will know it. So it's an experiential journey. Only you can take that journey. Spend time with yourself, indulge in introspection, try to reach out to the divinity inside you. You are the best friend and you are the worst enemy. There is a very nice shlok in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6. Uddhare, Shri Krishna says to Arjuna, उद्धरेदात्मा आत्मानं दात्मानं वसादये आत्मैव यात्मनो बंधुर आत्मैव रिपुरात्मा. When he says he loses all his courage to fight, he says, pick yourself, you have to pick yourself up because you are your best friend. You are your worst enemy. If you can pick yourself up, nobody can put you down. If you cannot, and if you put yourself down, nobody can pick you up. So pick yourself. Uddhare datma atmanam datmanam vasadaye atmaiva yatmano bandhu atmaiva ripuratmana. If there's one slok I want you to read, and then there are a couple of sloks which follow that, which support this concept. If there's one slok I want you to read from Bhagavad Gita, this is it, that you are your best friend. Differentiate between Shreyas and Preyas, what is eternal and what is ephemeral or transient, and eventually it will come to that. Identify with self and Atman. You are more than your body, you are more than your mind, you are more than your intellect, you are the ultimate eternal bliss. Believe in that and be your own friend. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for your indulgence, for your engagement, and I hope you picked up a few nuggets of wisdom out of this. I shared with you what I know, what I think, and I'm open for discussion, questions, comments. Thank you very much.